Now, look at our own neighbors. If you would think that small countries like Nepal or Sri Lanka or even Bangladesh or Maldives uh, uh, would, in the context of a pure sense of deal making, would not actually uh, follow such antagonistic policies towards India. After all, in the case of Sri Lanka, let's say the Tamil question has been deep rooted in terms of the problems that we had, and they're nothing to do with deal making. In the case of Nepal, there is there how should I say overblown sense of sovereignty uh, and looking at everything from the viewpoint of how they can assert their separateness and their independence and their sovereignty towards India, even if it was to cost them in terms of their own interests. In the case of Bangladesh, there's a whole history of partition and Islamism and everything else, which has nothing to do with deal making. After all, the Islamists are not motivated by by deal making. They they have a religious agenda, a certain viewpoint
Yeah.
about Islam and its and how the rest of the world has to adjust to the tenets of Islam and stuff like that, impose their worldview. Now, if the Taliban treat their women very badly, it has very deep cultural and religious roots. It's nothing to do with deal making. That all right, if America gives them 100 million, 200, $1 billion, they will give women all the rights that modern women have. It's not going to happen. So to come back to the question you asked, uh, we really don't know what Trump will do, will not do. He's taken certain actions after he took over, which are bewildering. One is that he walked out of the WHO. Yes, the WHO needs reforms, no doubt, but everybody agrees that that you have to prepare the international community against future pandemics.
Yeah.
There has to be international cooperation. Now, the only organization which can provide that kind of cooperation is the WHO. Now, WHO has not functioned properly. Maybe China has too much influence there, and so do people like Bill Gates and these foundations who then give money to the WHO and then set the WHO agenda on vaccines and everything else. And these vaccines and other things are controlled by foundations, so they make a lot of money out of it. So this philanthropy is sort of based on huge profits that these companies make. Um, so therefore, WHO needs reforms, fine, but you're not going to get a reform of the WHO by just walking out of it. And then the Paris Climate Change Agreement, which is even worse. Either all of us agree that this climate change business is a hoax, that it is a kind of a ploy by Western companies because they have these technologies to build up this climate change cataclysm and then um, sell their technologies to the rest of the world and dominate that space for years to come. Or you believe that there is some truth in this, looking at the fluctuations that we see in weather conditions and storms and hurricanes and drought and everything else, and the warming up of the climate, stuff like that. The point is that right from the time when the UNFCCC was set up, and all these wretched COPs have been taking place, 28 of them, this has been on the agenda. And let's say India's position has been very clear and firm uh, that if you want the rest of the world, the developing world, to adopt these new technologies, which are climate change related, then there has to be a flow of technologies and finances uh, to the developing countries so that they can pursue
Yeah.
this mitigation and adaptation agenda because this is extremely, extremely expensive. Now, if the United States just walks out, first of all, he's now saying that forget this business about this renewables and changing over uh, from a economy based on fossil fuels to renewables. Uh, for example, as you know, in the United States, he just passed executive orders: no more windmills and no more of these solar panels and stuff. And then he's going to drill so much that the United States will become the largest uh, producer of oil and gas, which will give the United States full energy independence. This goes totally against all that has been discussed for the last 3 decades or so on this climate change problem. So one doesn't know how the rest of the world is going to cope with it when the principal player, the most powerful country, has walked out of what is a an agenda for the international community and accepted as such and related to the future of the planet and therefore future of the humanity. Uh, and then he's talked about the territorial expansion of the United States in his speech. And I pointed out in a discussion the day before yesterday that nobody has picked it up in the press or pointed this out, that he actually in his speech talked about the territorial expansion of the United States. He didn't want to say in his speech just after the inauguration that he's going to claim Greenland and Panama or whatever, but he let in this little phrase. And now, as you know, he has rung up the Prime Minister of Denmark, and
Had a
Denmark
fight with them.
doesn't know which way to go because they thought that he was not probably serious, or they could tell him, look, what you want? You want more bases? We can give you more bases. You want more access to resources? Well, we can give you contracts, but it's not a question that of parting with our sovereignty to you, but